have fun no matter what you're doing.
Yes.
Absolutely. So crank it up, turn it down. We like to talk about other drummers and what they're doing behind their kits.
Yeah.
And drummers tend to be very opinionated, supportive of each other, but usually really opinionated about the stuff, especially when they're at home behind their keyboards. That's when it really comes out.
The keyboard
There's
warriors.
no backlash, you know? But we like to talk about drum habits, things that people are doing, techniques, gear, different things like that. And we like to just, on the show, crank it up or turn it down. So if you dig it, crank it up. If it's not your style, turn it down. That's it.
Cool.
That's it. This is completely personal, totally your opinion. And
I'm not briefed on any of this stuff. I don't know what the questions are going to be.
Sean doesn't know any of this.
I don't know.
You're briefed. You're briefed.
Sean's like, jumping the gun. Jumping the gun. All right, guys. First one. Here we go. Crank it up, turn it down, breaking down your cymbal stands after a gig.
Ooh, okay. I am going to crank it up because I have memory locks on my cymbal stands, and my cymbal bag is maybe that
short one.
It's a kind of a shorter one.
Yeah.
So I do break them down. I have another hardware case where I don't have to break them down, but I do take them apart because I have the memory locks and it locks back into place. It's not a big deal for me.
And you only play a 4-piece kit generally, so you only have a couple stands.
I only have a couple stands.
So
I break it down.
it's not too much work.
Right.
Aaron?
I would say crank it up. I'm a bit OCD.
Do you have all your
afraid.
stands like labeled and stuff? And like this
I do.
is foot one on the rug?
I'm afraid I do.
Oh, wow.
I have Sharpie lines and stuff like that, and sometimes I'll take out my phone and I'll have my planogram as a picture. You know, because to be fair, I'm moving stuff around a lot.
Yeah.
But listen, you can get a 4 or 5 piece kit and throw it, set up, take it down. But I do like to be comfortable. I like things not to move. If something is produced in a factory in another country and it shouldn't make a sound, I don't want it to make a sound. I don't want to hear a squeak. I don't want it. If it moves, it's gone out of my life forever.
Forever.
If it's gone.
It's not just that.
Yeah,
it's
it's
like, nope, this is it. I'm getting rid of it.
He'll write it off just like that.
In there.
Yeah, I'd say we are no longer in a friendship or a professional relationship. You are gone.
You failed me.
So the wingnut's I've got to turn it home, and it's got to stay there for the entire session or gig or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's
So,
it.
yeah,
One strike and you're out.
Yeah, I'm sorry to everyone.
That's it.
I'm super anal, even at home.
Oh
Yeah.
no!
And
Don't apologize.
It gets worse. It gets worse. I'm sorry. I rehearse setting up and tearing down.
Wow.
I also rehearse putting it into the vehicle and
Oh my
distances
God, I've
and
never
timing.
heard
I'm
this ever
bad.
in my life.
Do you have
I time
a
it.
vehicle where it only fits just right one way?
Yeah.
Okay.
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 and,
Because that makes it better. That makes it okay.
And,
I feel like.
and I would use a combination of soft and hard cases.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because they'll allow a little bit.
A little bit of give.
Your hardware case, I feel, should always be a hard case, even though I use soft cases. So yeah, I do all that. I rehearse. I did it just last week.
I know a lot of people do that.
Especially, I do have some larger setups, but even just a one up, one down, and then I'll set it up and tear it down. And say, okay, that was 11 minutes. Okay.
That's amazing.
And distances from the car to the venue and all this kind. Yeah.
All right, because you have your own system,
Crank
right?
it up.
What happens when someone walks up and says, "Here, I'll help you," and starts dismantling your gear?
Okay, so there's a few.
Are they gone and out of your life forever?
No.
Okay.
There's because I really appreciate it. There's a few versions of that, so
Okay.
I'll just talk about a couple.
Yeah.
The person, if you ascertain they absolutely don't know what they're doing, I worry about that because I generally use costly drums, right?
Yeah.
And I know they mean well, and it's dark and it's a trip hazard.
Right.
So I really kind of discourage that person.
Right.
A friend who's a drummer or a friend of a friend who's a drummer, I'll allow because I want to engage. I'm happy to engage, and sometimes they oh, what's this? So I'll ingratiate them or whatever the word is into that a little bit, but not fully. No. So I've
I'll always let someone
You
carry.
almost said problem. It's not problem.
It is.
Yeah.
It's not. It's an
It's not
issue.
a problem.
It's
It's
well.
an issue.
It's an
Issue's
issue.
Slightly more okay.
And I'm kind, I am kind.
You're a nice guy.
Because,
Yeah.
they say, oh, that's a nice... And often I let them play. Now, sitting in, that's probably another different
That's a
question.
different conversation.
That's a different question. But, I
Yeah.
generally don't like it, but I'm
Right.
still trying to be kind.
Well,
'Cause-
overall, breaking down cymbal stands, I'm turning it down. I'm turning it down,
Yeah.
man. And here's why.
Okay.
Adam years ago would have all his cymbal stands and make sure they all fit in the hard case. You know, they fit in the case just right. So like nothing was hot, nothing was above this height, even if I wanted it to be,
Right.
because then it could go in the case. Now, I have turned into a completely different person because at that time, everything was memory locked, colors labeled, drum rug, all the different spots, you know, all the tape on the drum rug.
You're
different things.
organized.
Yes, very much. Ever since I started playing, that was when I played like a 7-piece kit, a bunch of cymbals, bunch of stuff. Ever since I started playing a 4-piece kit with just a ride and a crash, I got some Pearl flat-based hardware, loosey-goosey, no memory locks, just collapse it down if I feel like playing a little higher, if I feel like tilting it a little bit more, whatever. I've become this
That
casual.
person.
I've become the hippie. I've become
Teach
the hippie
me.
person.
Nice.
Teach me, man.
And I have to say, it's changed my life.
Teach
It's
me.
changed my life. It's an amazing feeling to just be like, whatever.
I'm probably in the middle then with everything because
Okay.
I will collapse them, but that's because I have the memory locks and everything kind of goes back into where it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so far as to like putting duct tape or
Sure.
everything on the rug or anything else like that, but everything does have its place and it goes back in. Like the tom holder locks back in. The tom, there's
Mm-hmm. Sure.
memory locks everywhere. So, yeah, I'm probably in the middle there.
Yeah,
That's fair.
Yeah.
That said,
That's fair.
and that said, I also, in that span, I'm very extreme when things happen in the drumming world, and I'll swing back and forth very
Right.
because, and it's partially because here I do it intentionally a lot because I want to learn and be like, okay, how are they doing it this way? Okay, let me bring an 18 to a gig and see what that feels like. That kind
Right,
of thing,
that's
right?
excellent.
And but Sean knows and can attest to this. I went from having a 22 by 20-inch bass drum, being so frustrated by moving that stupid big lug-in bass drum
Yeah.
around that I got rid of that and I got a bop kit that had a 14.
Right.
You went to the total
So-
extreme.
Total
And
extreme.
then that wasn't working.
And now
for
and
you.
I've
It's
settled
too-
on a
it's too
20,
little.
12, 14 for
Right.
most of my gigs.
Well, no,
So-
then you went from the 14 to the 18, and then you
You're
went
right.
to the 18 to the 20.
So what are you running right now?
20.
20. So both you guys are far more healthier than I am. That's
Healthier.
where I'm here in the middle. Like, yeah, he's crazy. He's a crazy person.
Yeah,
No.
From what you were saying there, if it squeaks or something like that,
It's gone.
It's gone. I'm like,
gone.
oh, you don't want to hear my pedal then because I
It's
think
gone.
it squeaks.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm even teaching or
Yeah.
doing something on camera and I do this and my still squeaks, I'll say, you just gotta give me a minute. And then I went down
Chuck
to
it out the back.
I went to the basement the other day to try and find. I left the student. I said, you just practice that for a moment. I went to the basement,
Yeah.
which is a bit of a journey.
Uh-huh.
Not pleasant either, to find WD-40
Uh-huh.
because I knew there was a can somewhere
Sure.
and I didn't find it. To be honest with you, I found it yesterday.
He's going to have to leave mid-podcast.
But I was like this. I just shifted,
Yeah.
and the stool
Sweet,
went.
yeah.
Geek, geek.
Wait a minute.
I'm like, no.
Wait a
So yeah, I'm that guy. Sorry.
Gotcha. Nope, it's all good.
I'm that
all right,
guy.
here we go. I got a couple more.
Cool.
Crank it up, turn it down, playing with 2 snare drums.
Well, I'll crank it up. I think it's fun to do that. I only experimented with that briefly. I had a piccolo and I didn't think that it worked for me, but it works for a lot of my favorite drummers. So I'm going to crank it up. I think it's a cool thing to do. It's fun. But I don't do it, but I'm cranking it up. I think it's kind of neat because there's so many different varieties of snare drums out there. Why not have 2 in your setup? Depending on what your setup is. If you're playing a 4-piece set, yeah, maybe a second snare drum is overkill. But if you have a 5-piece set and you're doing some up-tempo reggae stuff or something like that, and you need a side snare for different accents, I think it's kind of cool. So I'll crank that up, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nowadays the trend is not to have a higher snare, but to have a deep one.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
they're even making
flat.
those floor tom snares too, and it's
Sure.
just like to have that like fat like, throw a big fat snare drum or something on it. It just is a splat drum, and then your normal snare.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
just-
What do you think? Crank it up, turn it down.
Yeah, crank it up. I don't do it all the time, but I have my combinations there
Yeah.
that work together. Like they kind of, I don't just add a snare to the left or the right as an auxiliary snare. I like it to harmonically work with the other snare.
Serve a purpose in the music too.
Yeah, that they both speak together, or at least if I migrate from the kit and I usually like 2 up, 2 down.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to sonically sit in there, you
Sure.
know.
Do you go
And
higher or lower with
I've
that
used
secondary?
3 before. You know, I've used a
Wow.
jungle snare to have
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
a couple of little things. Not done the low tuning
Yeah,
or the
no.
ballad snare.
Yeah.
That's just not for me.
Just 2 things. Yeah, 2 snares that are somewhere in there. Because
Yeah.
I've heard that like deep thing.
Yeah, and it sounds
It's neat.
It's-
It
it's-
sounds
it's-
decent recorded. I haven't
it
heard
does.
it in person. I mean, I've experimented and gotten that sound for people who are looking for it in the shop. One thing that scares me about that, being here working at a shop and giving advice and education, is 9 times out of 10 people are like, here's a drum hack to get that fat sound. Just take this lug and detune it. I'm just like, oh,
Yeah.
so you're going to be buying drum heads all the time. You
Right.
can get that sound using muffling and using a lower tuning of the snare drum, but to just completely detune a couple tension rods is
Yeah.
like not
You're
like
asking for trouble.
you're asking for trouble. And uneven tension, your rebounds all thrown off. There are ways to get that sound without doing that.
Yep.
yeah, it doesn't have it doesn't have response. And for me, I could have my main snare tuned slightly down, which I did the other day for a friend's record, and then catch the floor tom with it. Because for me, then it's another stand and another snare that just with the way I play,
Yeah.
I've heard some great players do it. For me, it's just one sound. For me, it's just one sound. So it just seems a little bit redundant, just for me. But I like 2 snares. Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah,
Crank
sounds
it
good.
up. Yep.
Yeah, I'll crank it up as well. I've done it a few times. I've gigged it a few times. I like where Sean was going with that real high like reggae thing. I've taken a little 12 out, flipped the snare wires off, and had like a timbale there.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah, that's
And
cool.
that is just which technically that might not count in 2 snare. It's a snare drum.
It's a snare drum.
It's a
snare
voice.
drum.
That's-
It's a voice, though. You know that
Yeah.
they're voices to me,
For sure.
and I feel my approach to drum set and drumming and snare drum, that's your accent. So I'm very particular about my
Yeah, there's
snare.
a reason we have a whole wall of snare drums downstairs, and every drum shop does across the country. It's
And
because
everybody-
think about how often you're playing on that drum. How many strokes does that drum get versus everything else in your setup?
Yep.
You know, I always remind people of that when
That's
they're
your
really
voice. I always
focused
think
on
about
something
that.
like a gong bass drum or something, for example.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Great, awesome, but how many times do you hit that
Right.
versus
Right.
your snare versus your, you know what I mean? And so I think some people focus on different things, which, focus on whatever. I always use the example with cymbals. A lot of folks start out with a pack or something, and then they always have one they go to. Usually it's either the Hatch or the Ride that they can't stand. The other ones are fine, but that's the first one to be upgraded.
Right.
Same kind of thing happens with drums at drum set. Sometimes someone's unhappy with their drum set sound, and instead of replacing something, they want to add something to it. And I'm just like, let's work with what you have, make that sound better, and then
Yeah.
expand.
I think the addition should always be minimum a compliment,
Yes.
and the maximum you can achieve is maybe be really dynamic, but not too dynamic. Like, I don't know if you'd say a gong bass drum, which I do use, but I took down the other day. It is a dynamic, but it's limited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe you buy a China or an effects cymbal, and maybe it's too much of a voice.
Right.
So you have to find a balance between it
Yeah,
being a
certainly.
compliment or something outrageous,
Right.
which
Yeah.
we're gonna love. It's just like,
Right.
oh wow, I love this so much. I just can't figure out where it's gonna work tonight.
And if you
or
have to
right.
think
in
about
my
it too
setup.
much, then
Then it's not right.
Okay, it's not right.
Yeah, and then there's the cost. So, you've just spent $500. You
Sure.
could have bought a snare drum that could completely change your drum career, your drum journey, because it's
Yep.
just so good. Even on a budget kit, a great snare can,
Yep.
Make
in
the
my
difference.
opinion, can really make a huge difference. So
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
2 snares, I think, are great.
Yeah, it's fun.
Especially if you could be creative.
And it's actually just talking about this is inspiring me to do it again.
Great.
Yeah.
Cool.
You know, I
That's
think
it,
I'm going
man.
to. It's been
If
a long
you're-
time.
If you're ever feeling stuck, I always encourage people tilt the ride a little,
Right.
move it around.
Take your tom off.
You've
Put
got
another tom on.
even the slightest adjustment to your setup. Obviously, keeping in mind your stroke and ergonomics and everything, but even the slightest adjustment to your approach or what you see or what you feel when you play can re-inspire you about the drums.
Yeah, because I
Absolutely.
don't know about you guys, but I don't know about you, but I find myself okay, this is my setup, and that's how I play.
Mm-hmm.
I play a 4-piece kit. I try to keep it pretty. Even my electronic kit is set the same way. I have a few different drum sets, and I set them up the exact same way. So you kind of get into that habit.
Yeah,
but it's always
sure.
great to get out of that habit. Add that extra snare drum. Take away that tom.
Throw a
or
cowbell on there or
Throw a
something.
cowbell on there.
Completely
I
changes
did that.
everything.
Yep, I broke out my.
Yep.
I hadn't played my cowbell in a long time, and I broke that out a few months ago, and I started playing a cowbell again. I'm like,
Yeah, even inverting your toms.
Yeah.
As odd
That's
as
a
it
good
can
one.
be. I tell guys, hey, just invert your toms, you
Yeah.
know? And when guys are not in a position to expand their kit or even change their heads, I said, well,
Right.
put your floor tom over here. They're like, you're out of your mind. But no, do it, you know?
Yeah. Try it.
Just try it and see
Yeah.
what happens that Saturday afternoon.
Yep.
And, usually I get a positive
you're gonna
response.
get,
Yeah,
you're
that
gonna
was,
get something positive.
Yeah.
out
that
of
was
it.
interesting,
Because
man.
it makes
I
you
did
think
it.
differently.
It does. It does. All right, speed round. Crank it up, turn it down, drumhead mutes.
Crank it up.
Why?
Versatility. I don't say. I'm not saying.
Okay,
that you need.
I should say I'm talking like sound off pad, like
Oh,
rubber.
No.
Put it on your head.
I thought you were talking about like a snare weight,
Like
or
a
something
muffler?
Like that.
No.
Not muffler, mutes.
No,
No.
I'm
cranking it down?
Cranking it down.
Cranking it
Yeah.
down. Crank it down.
Yeah.
Not even turning it down. You're cranking,
I'm cranking it down.
Yeah.
I don't like them. I hate
it's out of my
selling- I
life
hate-
already before it even enters my
I
life.
hate selling
Yeah.
sound off pads.
Yeah.
I hate it. I'm like, they're
Yeah, the
horrible.
mutes. Yeah,
they feel like mush.
I put this in here because I was looking downstairs and I ordered some more today.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to talk about that on the show so I can crank it down.
Good.
Yeah. So you
All
can
right.
crank it up and sell them. No,
No.
down. Crank
yeah,
it down.
Yeah, I'm cranking it down. And
Yeah.
and I think it's funny because I remember, and I've seen this happen with a few students, and I was like, that's me. That was me. I remember when I first started playing, I was real self-conscious about my playing, my parents' basement, and I was like, they're going to be listening to me. And like, for whatever reason, I
Self-conscious.
had that.
Yeah.
I had that thing. I mean, I started playing like late middle school age.
Okay.
So, the junior high, like everyone's looking at me. I had some of that still. So I felt that way. And I remember like I got my first drum set, right? And getting all the mutes for it because I was like, this is great because I can practice, but it'll be quiet. And you instantly have the worst rebound, the worst response ever.
Yeah.
Like it's I think the best use for a drumhead mute like that is not even for practice on a drum set. I think that stuck on a countertop as a practice pad is great.
Yep.
Yeah. For a
something
music
like that is
video.
great. Yeah,
Music
or
video. Yeah, it's no.
Yeah, but and we sell them, but I always make sure that whoever buys them knows what they're getting into.
I'm always a little heartbroken too when, especially if it's somebody that's just starting out, and the youngster wants to play the drums, and maybe the parents are like, "Well, we need mutes for it." I'm just like, "Oh no."
No, you don't.
I'm like, "No, you don't." I'm like,
Don't do that.
If you can play, I know it's loud. It'll eventually turn into music. At first,
Yep.
it just
Yep.
sounds like racket. But if you can limit the time, like, okay, don't be a jerk and play at 10 o'clock at night
Sure.
when everyone's trying to sleep, but set your practice time, and that's when you practice because you're going to want to play the drums acoustically. That's where you develop your feel, your touch, your technique,
Mm-hmm.
and those pads do so much damage, I think.
Yeah,
And-
they suffocate everything, action, and they have their place.
And,
but
yeah,
sound is gone. It's sound
Yeah.
is everything.
And for me, inspiration to sit down behind the drum set is gone.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
that's more important than sound to me.
I'd rather just sit at
Sound
a
is
practice
everything.
pad. I'd rather just sit at a practice pad.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, drumhead mutes. You got
Yeah, sorry
cranked
about that.
down hardcore.
We really-
It's okay. That's what
We
hey,
blistered
We
them.
sweep the leg on that one. They are gone.
gone. All right. Speaking of gone, this segment's gone. We're jumping into drum industry news.